So again, I'm at Old Orchard Mall, and like I said, they can have a deal going on, and you can have basically a Halloween party here, and then they can have an Eve of the Eve party for Thanksgiving at Old Orchard Mall. Something for kids, truly, for kids. An Eve of the Eve party where you go around and, I don't know, you say, Thanksgiving is about saying thanks. That's why it's called Thanksgiving. So they have some kind of Eve of the Eve, the Eve, the day before Thanksgiving. And then the Eve of the Eve is 2 days before Thanksgiving. So usually the night before Thanksgiving is the largest bar night outside of New Year's Eve, but it's actually the largest night that people go out to restaurants and bars and that, because they have a lot of friends that come into town for the holiday. Now they can do this same thing during Christmas, the Eve of the Eve. The day before Christmas Eve can be a big gathering for friends and that come into town for the holidays, and you go out the day before Christmas Eve. So they can do that for Thanksgiving and New Year's. Thanksgiving, you can have the Eve of the Eve they have for New Year's already. Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then they have the Eve of the Eve for New Year's already. And you can have the Eve of the Eve for Halloween. The day before Halloween is the Eve, and 2 days before is the Eve of the Eve. So you can have the Eve of the Eve party for Halloween. So I'm here at Old Orchard Mall and Maggiano's, where I used to go for a lot of wholesale events, and Bar Siena. Never been there. Didn't know it existed. It's new. So, at least new to me. And so it's right next to Nordstrom's, where I used to go all the time. Me, my mom, and sister. Nordstrom's has a restaurant inside, and we used to just meet up to go to lunch at Nordstrom's. Yeah, they have a little restaurant inside, and so we would meet up to go to lunch at Nordstrom's. Here's Macy's and Bloomies, which is Bloomingdale's, and the cinemas and that. And they could have, all kinds of cinema Halloween related in a multiplex, all these different movies going on, leading up to Halloween, but they can do it going on leading up to Thanksgiving and leading up to Christmas and leading up to New Year's. And there's movies, tons of movies about Halloween, tons of movies about Thanksgiving, tons of movies about Christmas and Christmas Eve, tons of movies about New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And so you can have these film fests for these holiday movies leading up to each of these holidays. And so you would run them all month long. So you would run them all month long for October for Halloween. Then you run all the Thanksgiving movies all month long for November. And even after Thanksgiving, you can still run them because people are still in the Thanksgiving mode. But this is when our nation gives thanks for everything. Thanksgiving. So it's time to give thanks. And that's when you go into church. And church is supposed to be, Thanksgiving is integrated with church, giving thanks for, your existence, number one. So no matter how bad your life is and so on and so forth, or how good, you always give God thanks. So I always give God thanks. I don't give people thanks, but I've never not given God thanks. I wouldn't even exist. I wouldn't even had the chance to be born without his blessing. So I give him thanks even if my life has been torturous from birth on. So I've never not given thanks and love to God. So, nope, I've never had a dark heart towards God, ever. And I've always asked God, if anything goes on, where have I failed Him? So, I don't do the other thing. I don't blame God. I've sat and asked God, and sometimes I've asked God questions, why? But that's very few and far between. Mine is not the reason why, mine is the do or die. So sometimes I've asked questions why, but that's very rarely that if I ever ask that in my life. That's the exception to the rule. Usually I ask, how can I walk closer in your steps? Meaning I want to be following in your lead, Lord, closer in your steps. I want to follow your lead. So I don't want to lead you, Lord. I want to walk behind you and follow your lead. I want to walk in your steps. So that means I want to walk in the same path as the Lord. I want to be one with the Lord. So that's been since I've been a child. I used to pray that. It's something I made up myself. I don't know if it's in the Bible. If somebody else does it, they could. But it's something that I've done since childhood. And I've asked constantly, where have I, if anything goes wrong, where have I failed you? Lord never fails. So, and they have many songs to it, the Lord never failing. It's just man failing him. Read the Bible. That's why the Old Testament gets me the sickest. The Lord comes through every time and man fails him every time. And I used to get sick reading the Old Testament. Truly sick at how man has betrayed God unbelievable amount of times. All the goodness, and they keep on betraying. It's kind of like my life. My path has been similar to what God has experienced in the Old Testament. I do goodness from birth on forward, and I get betrayed. No matter how much goodness I do, I end up getting betrayed. And so it's interesting. And in the Old Testament, it tells me men betray you. And Revelations in the New Testament, Jesus gets betrayed by Judas, but it's just not Judas. It's more than, it's the Pharisees and many others. So there's a whole amount of people that betray Jesus. So make no mistake, Judas was just the one who pointed Jesus out. But there are many that knew Jesus but weren't close to him because it was hard with the disciples. And they were very vigilant of Jesus, making sure people didn't get close that shouldn't. That's why the story of the children and Jesus telling them, the disciples, to let the children through. The disciples were very protective of Jesus, highly protective of Jesus. So the whole point of this is that no one really could get near, and that's the point of Judas. Getting near Jesus wasn't an easy thing. That's the other story of when they break into the house. They break into the house through the roof and let the sickly man down in. It wasn't easy to get near Jesus. Jesus sent Paul and other disciples out. But it was very hard to get near Jesus. And so you see it through the stories. And again, Jesus did go into individual houses, and there's stories of him getting his feet washed by people when they come to visit. They wash Jesus' feet. So, again, there is many stories about Jesus, and this is why Judas had to kiss him in the garden because other people couldn't get near him. So it had to be one of the disciples. It's the same thing if you learn and talk to mafia people. Usually it's your frenemy. Somebody plays your friend, but they're your enemy that gets close to you. And so that gets close to you and then betrays you. And that's the story. And that's why families, the focus on the family, and that K-Love should have all focus on the family, is trying to end family betrayal. Trying to end family betrayal. Jesus had a family, the disciples, and one of the family members betrayed him. And what did one of the family members do to God? Satan, Lucifer, morning star, God's most beloved, his intimate family, betrayed him. That was the point of Jesus going to the cross. Jesus had to show that he wouldn't betray God, and Jesus communicated to the disciples that they can't betray. If they do, they're condemned. And just as he was having to go to the cross and do these things for God and couldn't waver, neither could they. And they were going to be tortured and executed and so on. And as you see, it's foreshadowed in the Bible, and they had to accept their path and their journey. And they couldn't deviate. So it's very big about not betraying in the Bible. And God has a big thing about not betraying. As I told my ex, many years I prepared her, the one thing you can never do to me is betray me. I will never betray you, and I've never betrayed anyone. Betray means evil. When somebody does evil, you're not betraying them. That is untrue. They call it snitches and other things, but I've told my own family if they did an unrighteous, say, killed somebody or raped somebody in that, I would turn them in. Just as my sister turned in her own son when he stole Adam, he stole gum, took him back in the store and turned him in. Her son Daniel drank and illegally underage, and she turned him in to the athletic director. She wasn't a snitch. She, as the Bible says, is destined to rebuke. Rebuke. And my sister used to always say, well, look at the path of Jesus, to me constantly. And so she would always remind me about Jesus. She only said this to me. She didn't say it to my brother or to my other brother or to my other brother or to my mother or to her husband. It was something she constantly reminded me about. It was just something from her to me. And my sister believed she had foreshadowings, that she had these vivid dreams that, foreseed the future. So that was her thing. And I talked to her about writing those down. When you have them, when you wake up, first thing, have a notebook next to you and write them. Now, if you understand the universe, there is energy moving through the universe, and some things are more connected. And women have nervous systems which are more towards the surface, and they have this spidey sense, and they do. It's a natural protection designed into women. Women had to have a natural intuition, and so to protect their children and to protect themselves from males, and so it's inbred it in them, but you do a lot of things to dampen down your sixth sense. So women, one of the number one ways that they were designed to protect themselves is have women's intuition. And you probably heard about that. women's intuition. And so, yes, you can, as the monks pray, and they try to harmonize with the universe, get the proper rhythm in the body, and that's why they do but what they're doing is creating a resonation within themselves. They're trying to get their cells to resonate at it. And you can go study monks when they pray, and you will see that they're trying to get their whole cellular structure to have a certain resonating, a certain vibration. So monks, by doing the they're trying to get their cells, every cell in their body, to resonate at this frequency, so this hertz, to line themselves up with the universe. They want to become one with the universe. And that's the origin of the Buddhist monks. And they do this sound because they believe this particular sound is the sound of origins or the existence of the universe. It is a sound that resonates through all of the universe. Not only our universe, but all of time and space. And so their goal through this meditation process is to be one, but they make the sound so they can line up their cellular structures, mind, body, and spirit, really, with the universe. And so they do this. Christian monks used to pray, and they pray in a certain way. You have this chant, and I put it out there, and they have this chant, and the whole point of the chant, the tempo of the chant, is what Christian monks believed caused a resonation. And they're trying to do their mind, body, and spirit and get the sound of their body in line with the universe. So they want to transcend this life, and how they're doing it while they're alive is to create this certain vibration, so to resonate. So they're trying to line up this particular sound of their body. And this is where, if you talk to anyone in the healing, you need to get the negativity out of your life. Now, if you want to preserve the negativity, that's fine. That's your way of life. And I am not saying that actions don't have to be rendered on people, but as it tells you in the Bible, I've fought since I've been a child, and I fought to put things into harmony. My actions were always to push things into harmony, truly, whether within my family or my friends at school and so on. My actions are always to put things in harmony. And so the God honest truth, I've never hit anyone more than was necessary. I've only did physical force as much as was necessary to get things in alignment. I've never had to carry it to the point, and I think E.J. Wick might have been the closest I've ever come to hurting somebody extremely, as I was going to physically put pressure on I had my foot on his throat in a particular place, and I was going to put certain snapping pressure because he wouldn't release my forearm, and he was biting down. And you ever drag a 200-pound plus man across a bar with your forearm? Yeah, that's it. Just my forearm. I dragged him out as he bit into mine. So, and he's over 200 pounds. And it is solid weight. No, he had very little fat, all muscle, and I'm dragging a 200-pound person across a room outside, and I got to the point, now I hit him twice in the side of the jaw, but he refused to let go. And so I gave him an alternative outside. Either you remove your teeth from my forearm, or I might have to do something. And the whole point of putting my foot there was to sever his connection so his teeth would release. Pit bulls. Do you know there is a neurological release for the pit bulls? But they don't teach you that. When they lock in, their jaws lock. But you can get the pit bulls to release the jaw if you apply pressure in the right place. You need to understand how to get those muscles to relax. It's not tightening the muscles. As you're getting out knots, you're applying a pressure to the right place on the jaw, the area of the pit bull. It relaxes the muscles and the jaw will naturally open. So you need to relax. You can shoot the dog with a muscle relaxer, and that's fine too. And as the muscle relaxing dart, but you have to hit the right area. You need to relax the neurological system, which will relax the the muscles that lock in the jaw. So with a pit bull, you don't have to kill them. You have to understand their anatomy and hit them with a muscle laxative in the right place. And then their jaws will naturally release. But you don't understand. We have laws, and we're a Christian-based nation and of people, and the laws were to create harmony within society. So we can get the right frequency as a people to move closer to God. Now, every day I experience tailgaters. And I experience other people that want to mess with that frequency, and these are satanic individuals. And they are satanic. They can say whatever they want, but they're messing with the harmony. And so every time, as I told one kid who was Indian from Northwestern University, there's a certain frequency and I have a certain tuning, and every time my tuning goes out of frequency, God knows that something negative to happen. He can feel my negativity and he can feel my positivity. So when things go out of harmony with me, God knows, and he can feel the frequency resonation of who's doing what to me. So he knows exactly who's harmed me. And as you know, everybody has a certain vibrational sound. Everybody's vibration is unique. You can identify somebody by their unique vibration. And this is another way to identify people. Just the heartbeat that they have, the detector, the military. Everybody has a unique heartbeat. That's a unique vibration. And so God knows who's doing what to me, and he knows who's thinking negatively about me. You betray your thoughts and yourself with your thoughts, so he knows exactly who's thinking negatively, who's conspiratizing against me. And he knows how things are affecting me. And he knows how people constantly try to push me out of disharmony. And for those that are, I laugh, because this life is very short. Say I lived 150 years. That's nothing. Billions and trillions of years to come. So your dirt nap is infinite. Your life here is just a speck. But again, this life is all a qualification period. So it's all a vetting period. And that's what Revelations tells you. It tells you. Revelations tells you straightforward. This life is just a vetting period. And he's determining good and bad. And he knows exactly who you are and what you're doing. So make no mistake about it. You're not hiding. It's impossible for you to hide. Your thoughts and your actions betray you, and he knows who the hell you are. And I'm telling you, he is coming for you. And it's not if, it's just when. And when it happens, it will never stop. So, as God points out in the Bible, dying once, that's just for man. Dying forever, that is how the Lord punishes you. So, infinite death. So, he's going to hurt you unbelievably forever. So, you can keep on doing these things, but it's to your demise. So, you can cause disharmony, and you're going to be put down, like this person in this car. As he feels the tense come into my body, you say I'm supposed to relieve it. But this is my way also, as any monk. They feel that, and that goes on and gets passed on to the Lord. And the person causing it will be dealt with. And you keep on doubting that people are going to be dealt with, but they're going to be dealt with. It's not if, it's just when. So, police, they don't understand this. But you can catch criminals because they have a certain resonation to them. So, negative energy. And they're putting off a certain frequency. And if you're reading that frequency, it's telling you how that person is feeling, and at certain frequencies what their actions will be. So yeah, you can tell when a person is going to do a particular action. It's not if, it's just when. And so you can see at the different levels when people make these negative actions. So as God said, I am a no experiment zone. And so if you experiment on me, everybody with you will be put to waste. I am not supposed to be experimented on. My life is not supposed to be toyed with. Just as I hold your life precious, you're supposed to hold my life precious. That's all my works of saving lives since I've been a child. So as I hold your life precious, you should hold my life to the utmost precious. So, and you don't. And so you attack me every day, and the Lord can feel my pain. I don't have to tell him anything. You think I have to tell him everything, but the whole point of inviting the Holy Spirit in is that God's in you and in tune with you. You're one of his. And the Holy Spirit, you commit evil acts, the Holy Spirit will leave you. So make no mistake about it. You can invite the Holy Spirit in, but it only stays through your goodness. So the Holy Spirit will leave you if you're evil. So believe me, that's why you don't go to heaven, you go to hell. The Spirit leaves you, and then you're condemned. So, again, you can invite the Spirit in, but you have to be a host. The host, that's all these people that go to church, I used to tell them, you're wasting your time. You're truly wasting your time, because all you're going here is for show. No dough, meaning you don't want to do the works, you don't want to do the repentance, you don't want to do the right actions, you don't want to move better through life. And so this is an exercise in futility. Now, yes, I told them, you may trick the congregation. You may be the wolf in sheep's clothing, like Bernie Madoff used to do in the Jewish country clubs. He used to sit in the bar, the social area. He didn't golf, and he would sit there, and he would socialize with people, and he'd get their accounts. And I told you that 50 billion, way more than that, because if that money grew, it was 100, 150, 200 billion dollars, say, that the financial service industry lost. Because over all those years, all those billions were never invested. And so that means it would have grew to billions upon that. So he stole from all the financial planners and insurance agents and mutual funds and hedge funds and everybody in financial service, literally, I believe, hundreds of billions of dollars. And that's a lot of money if you think about trading revenue for the exchanges. Think about trading revenue for the exchanges. So now you can see how deadly fraud is. Because remember, insurance companies invest. They buy property, and so do hedge funds in that. So all that money goes into property. It goes into different forms of securities like REITs. You buy REITs, and REITs invest in real estate. It's a security. And it goes into bonds and options and futures and so on. And usually it gets spread around. So you can understand how devastating fraud is. And then when you do currency fraud, right? Currency fraud, it's another way to weaken the dollar, and it does weaken the dollar. The Forex value goes down. And so you end up purchasing less of stocks and bonds or real estate. Your money doesn't go as far. So when people do currency fraud, that directly affects every American, and it directs everybody who deals in U.S. currency around the world, who does trade, exports, imports, whoever holds dollars or invests in U.S. Treasury. So we're a reserve currency of the world, so it affects everybody in the world when people do currency fraud. When the U.S., it affects our bonds, it affects everything. And oh yeah, that's when people do tax evasion and that. It affects the creditworthiness of the federal government. Remember the black reverend? And so you're saying, so great, then why did Al Sharpton steal all the FICA? There's money going into Medicare and Social Security, and as far as I understood, he didn't steal so much on the personal income tax. He withheld the FICA from his employees that go into Social Security. So withholding FICA hurts Social Security. And Social Security doesn't get the money to be able to invest in a timely manner. And timing of FICA tax is very important. That's why they penalize you. But somehow our president invites somebody into the White House continuously, pumping up his presence, and then he gets a show on MSNBC as this, mighty Democrat and that. But Thomas Sowell, the black economist, said black leadership stole them out. They're following the wrong people, he's saying. They're listening to the wrong people. And in turn, they've caused themselves unbelievable harm, unbelievable pain and suffering. Because just like white people down south got burned by white leadership. They sold them on slavery. And do you know all those white rednecks got displaced? They were field hands. Rednecks because they bent down and the back, and that's why they wore the scarf on the back of their neck. They keep the back of their neck from burning, and they wet it and so on. But they were field hands. And when slaves came in, they displaced all these white people. And they didn't have jobs. They worked in all kinds of planting and picking and everything. And all of a sudden the slaves came in and they displaced them. And I showed you that this is immigration that was legal, because slavery was legal, and it was killing the people down south, but they didn't understand. They had Southern pride. And so when the South went to war against the North, it was a pride factor. They didn't understand the economics of what was going on. They were suffering, and they knew the blacks took their jobs, but they didn't really understand all the economics about it. But they were suffering. Lots of blacks, lots of whites, I should say, starved. While blacks were getting medical care, food, shelter, housing, clothing, and then the whites see them refuse to work. They take their jobs, right? Willingly or unwillingly, truly. But the house people understood, the slaves, they were the smarter ones, understood it was a great opportunity, and they embraced it, and they called them Uncle Toms, because it was the ignorant blacks that were all wrong. And so Bill Maher was right. The house, those were the intelligent ones that understood the opportunity that they were granted. They could have been in prison camps and starved to death and worked to death in Africa, because that's where they came from. They were prisoners, and they would have either been just killed because they don't have enough to feed them, and they don't need their labor, and they can't sell them, so they just kill them. And the same thing that Germans did with the Jews. They would work them to death, and the ones that didn't, they would just kill. And then they would strip their bodies, if they had any gold teeth or hair in it, and they used those components. But the whole point is that here they don't understand their history, and they think things were better off. It's just like in India. Britain came in and actually made things better, because if you go back in Indian history, there is a lot of warring between the tribes. And India, the largest democracy in the world, it is the largest democracy in the world. But the funny thing is, because they have so much corruption and so much putridness, they don't grow. And we studied in economics. We studied Latin America, we studied India, and we studied the difference in bribery systems. We studied bribery systems. So I understand bribery systems. We had economists who spent their life studying how the bribery systems in different countries work. And the whole point of it, no matter what, they were inefficient. But some systems, when you paid somebody a bribe, they stayed bribed. Other places, you paid them a bribe and they would come back for another bribe, and you would call them people who do extortion, like they were trying to do with David Letterman. You pay them once and then they keep on coming back. Well, there are places in the world where you pay one bribe and they stay bribed, and you don't have to worry about, they're not trying to extort you. They're trying to make money related to trade, truly trade, and in their way, in their country, they're honest people, because you would say bribes, but the system is not just and unjust. And so sometimes you get good people caught in bad situations, and like Yomei's father in North Korea. And this is why I have compassion towards her, because her father was doing trade that actually made North Korea better. But the only way to do the trade, because countries wouldn't trade with North Korea. Truly, countries wouldn't trade with North Korea. So to do trade, they had to do it illegally. And so her father did illegal trade. But that trade was benefiting the regime. The problem was he wasn't paying patronage to the regime. He wasn't giving them a cut of the illegal gain. And so that's where he ran into problems. If he was giving those people that were higher up a little chunk of the action, he would have been fine. But he didn't. And he would have had to give it to the right person. But again, he was doing something that actually made North Korea better. He was bringing resources into North Korea, metals and that necessarily would have never made it into North Korea. So her father was a good person, doing something that supplied North Korea with necessities to these metals to help the people of North Korea. In turn, he was having a pretty good life. But he didn't want to pay the system, and so he got caught, and they punished him severely because they wanted their tithe. That's why we pay taxes, right? In the system, We say you have to be honest, and the government has a chunk of everything you do. Whether it's sales tax or other forms of taxes, the government is in. That's why they say there's only two things, death and taxes. Death and taxes. So you have to pay taxes and you die. But the government that's why they call him Uncle Sam. He's your uncle. Whether you want him to be your uncle or not, he's your uncle. Now there's tax avoidance, and that's just timing. And that just defers the tax consequences. And so life insurance can give a tax-free death benefit, but that money eventually gets taxed. It goes into a trust. Trusts are taxed at rates of 35%, and there's ways to shelter it, but when it makes distributions, the trust gets taxed. So it's only deferring taxes. You can never escape taxes. So if you understand that, it's just tax deferral. And when you're paying the tax, this generation or the next generation, but when distributions come out, eventually you have to pay taxes. Even they say tax-free life insurance. Well, no, that's not true. There's embedded gain, and that gain is taxable, and you die before the policy matures, then you get a death benefit, and then that death benefit pays the taxes, and because the insurance companies pay taxes. So make no mistake about it. Remember, insurance companies, they pay taxes. So there's embedded gain that insurance companies need to deal with. And so they work with real estate and other instruments to help shelter some of their taxation. So insurance companies have to shelter gain. So they get gain passed on to them when people die and policies mature in that. There are things in mutual funds like Vanguard. We have tax deferred mutual funds, lots of them that do very well, actually. But the whole point is it's tax deferred. Anytime a distribution happens, you have to pay taxes on it. It works the same way with life insurance companies. So they're paying it at the corporate level. So make no mistake about it, when you don't understand life insurance, there is no tax fraud. It's just moving around who's paying what taxes, and corporations have, labor costs and other costs that individuals don't have that they can offset gain with. Surely, they have all kinds of operational losses or expenses that they can offset gain with. And so that's the cost of doing business. So that's necessary and ordinary expenses related to the business, and they use that to offset cost. And then they use other ways, shelter in real estate and other things, to shelter gain. So real estate, 1031 exchanges, insurance companies use a lot of them. They own a lot of property and they do a lot of 1031 exchanges. People maybe don't know that, but any life insurance company, annuity company, they're doing a lot of 1031 exchanges. And so they use the rent roll, but they still have to pay taxes. They offset income in that, but there is still coming into the corporation. And so they're just controlling the amount of taxation that they experience every fiscal year. And they pay it in a quarterly, and so every quarter, but they're just controlling the taxation. So the government is getting their money. So everybody thinks these things are escaping taxation. They're not. It's just who's paying what. So there is no tax fraud going on. There's just tax deferral and tax optimization. And so they're just moving the pieces around, and where they're paying the tax is, just like an S Corp. You can choose to pay it yourself and pass it on through, then you pay it through your personal income tax, or you can pay stuff at the corporate level. And sometimes it's better if the corporation has a lot of operating costs in that. Say you're a utility. You have a lot of fixed infrastructure, hard infrastructure in that. And so they have a lot of heavy operating costs. And so with the heavy operating cost, they have a lot of tax offset. So then it's better to have the utility pay the taxes and you get a dividend, right? So you're saying that, well, I'm getting double taxation on my dividend, but it's not true. You're getting a chunk of taxes on a portion of the dividend you're getting, but the corporation also was able to give you a larger dividend because they had lower taxation by those offset costs. If you understand the tax system, it's left and right. And so debits and credits, it's just a balancing system. And so what's happening is the utility is paying lower taxation, you're getting a dividend, and you're paying a little bit more taxation through your personal income. And you have offsets on the Schedule A, but to make sure the government gets a certain amount of minimum taxes, they have de minimis amounts. So those are amounts that you have to get over these thresholds. Anything less than this amount, you have to pay taxes. It means it doesn't meet the threshold. There is other de minimis expenditures, that the government doesn't worry about taxation on. So it works. De minimis can be applied in different parts, different ways with the tax code. So you have to get over these thresholds, 2% or 10% or whatever thresholds. And then the money above that, still the money below it, you get taxed on. But the money that's above it, you get a deduction for. But you have to hit these certain things, and then they have phase outs, where after you get off a certain level, they start taking away the deductions. And so there's two tax systems. And so phantom income comes in, but it's not really phantom income. You can see it coming because of how the phase outs work in that. And so you have to understand that with securities in that, there can be phantom income. And that's what happened when corporations went bust, but people held these stocks. There was still phantom income. And so the negativity in the city of Chicago by pieces of garbage like this, EC, something, these are the domestic terrorists. So let's look at the license plate. EC75556 SS Monte Carlo. Piece of garbage. So these are Chicago's domestic terrorists. And these are the people God's looking for to exterminate. These aren't God's people. These are the Antichrist. So these people bringing the negativity, and understand, evil in the Bible tells you is bringing negativity. And with bringing the negativity, you reach Revelations, and they say those people that bring the negativity will be exterminated. So I told you, those black people that hurt me are going to be exterminated. It's not if, it's just when. And as the black guy who got in a fight with me said he's going to eternal damnation, he's right. He will be condemned. And everybody had supported him. And that's no loss to God. Do you think he just got mankind to care about? He's got eternal existence to care about. So, in The Meaning of Life by Mighty Python, why don't you watch that when they ask him to donate his organ? And then they start reminding him about the universe and then about infinite space and their role in it and how it really is nothing. But that movie and that clip, John Cleese is a Christian, and as far as I know, he's led a good life, and he is very much a believer. And the Mighty Python people are very much believers. But they want to use comedy to convey the reality of life to people. So people think they're more significant than they are. But as it says, you're just a speck in an infinite system. So your speck will do nothing. Your lack of existence or existence will not change. But there are other people who are significant that their lack of existence changes everything. And so when you affect them negatively, you affect all of existence negatively. So, but this is all spelled out in the Bible. And you don't understand. So when you touch these people negatively, you are touching the wrong person in the wrong way. And you are now destined to the deepest of damnations. The deepest of damnations. So we put law enforcement as the police pass by to make sure these evil people don't affect society in evil ways. What was the origins of bin Laden? Have you ever read his manifesto? I've watched him through the 90s and the Clinton bombing of the milk factory. I've been watching bin Laden since his existence back in Afghanistan. And then you have the Charlie's Wars where they surprise. Bin Laden was recruited by the CIA to fight against the Russians. He was trained by our Central Intelligence Agency. His father worked in construction, had a construction company in Saudi Arabia, and he was trained as an operative for the U.S. government. And so when you abandon people, just like in Iraq, I pointed out, we had these people that helped the U.S. troops deal with issues with the different Al-Qaeda and different organizations they were fighting against, and then we abandoned them. There's the movie about the just came out about him going back and getting his, his assistant, his local person. But the whole point was we weren't supposed to leave these people, and we promised them, and this is where Obama failed. He didn't honor his promise to these people. And we didn't have to bring them to the United States. So if he said we have Guam, we have territories, we have partners. And remember, in Australia, we were supposed to take in these immigrants, and we asked Australia to take in these immigrants for us for a period of time. And then they wanted them gone, and they ended up in a boat, and Australia was arguing with Obama, and they put them on the boat and shipped them out. And so eventually push came to shove. Well, they're not going back, and you can't leave them in the middle of the ocean. So Obama was forced to address an issue which he was breaking a promise. So he did many things to break promises, just like in Syria. If you cross this line and use chemical weapons again, we will do it. Well, Reagan said to Libya, if you do this, and he dropped the bomb on Gaddafi. And he also dropped the bomb on the French embassy because they're part of NATO, and they told our planes, our military, that you can't fly through French airspace to get to Libya. It was a shorter route. And so it put our pilots more exposed to different air defenses because they had to go across different countries instead of going across friendly countries. And so they were at greater risk. And so the embassy was cleared out in Libya. They got advance notice, no cleaning crew, not anyone died. No cleaning crew. The cleaning crew's there overnight. There are guards in the embassy, and other embassy personnel that work overnight. And everybody was out of the French embassy, all the guards, everybody. And why? It's just like they're doing in Iran is doing in Palestine. We did in Vietnam. We dropped leaflets and we told people to get out. Now, the problem with that is, how are you vetting, as ISIS and many others, like Joseph Mengele, as people were leaving Germany towards the end of the war, he mixed in with the refugees. And from being a refugee, he was able to get out of Germany and then into Central America. And he lived into the 70s. But the whole point is, some Nazis got out of Germany by mixing in with the rest of the people, the refugees. So it happened during World War II, probably happened during the Korean War, Vietnam, and other wars. So yeah, dropping the leaflets is good, but are you vetting everybody coming out? So is Israel vetting everybody that's coming out? So it's one thing to give them advance notification and they get fortifications, but they could also abandon their positions and you go in and no one's there. And they move everything. They move the missiles, they move everything, and you're left with nothing. Or they destroy all their intelligence and everything. And that's the thing about going in with bin Laden, is we're grabbing all this intel, but if we capture them alive, we could have gassed the people in the compound and put them out. They didn't have gas masks and that. So they could have gassed the compound, knocked them all out. No one had to be killed, and we could have picked them up and had them alive, and then we didn't make him a martyr by killing him, we made him a martyr. Oh yeah, we made him a martyr. That's why things after bin Laden died, things got worse. Because now Obama made him a martyr by killing him. They could have kept them alive like the blind sheep. Some people you don't kill because you don't want to make them a martyr. They want to die, but you prevent them from dying and you hold them for the rest of their life. So not everybody do you kill. There are key individuals that it's better to keep them alive and not put them in martyrdom and let them die in natural cause. So, but the whole point is, yes, the leaflets are good, but also people like we found out in Vietnam, if you go back, they move things around because we did these leaflets, and they used Cambodia constantly to cross over into to prevent our U.S. troops from getting to them. So they go into Cambodia, and they had their SAM systems in Cambodia and everything. That's why the B-52s with Nixon, he started carpet bombing Cambodia. And then they came back to the table, signed the peace accord. But the funny thing is, we had no way to enforce the peace accord. We moved out all of our aircraft carriers, all of our planes. We moved out all of our troops. So we signed the peace accord, and this is why when you go in, you never come out. This is why when we signed the accord in Korea, we left all the troops and military in South Korea. That way, North Korea couldn't dishonor the treaty. But if we would have pulled out of North Korea, they would have invaded South Korea, and it would have been one big North Korea. So make sure they had the Chinese backing. And so they would have invaded South Korea, overwhelmed them, and that's what happened in Vietnam. So once we pulled out all of our ships and left, they invaded South Vietnam, breaking the treaty, and we had no way to enforce the treaty. No way to enforce what North Vietnamese agreed to, because we took our aircraft carriers, we took our troops and everything and left. And so when they broke the treaty, which they did, once we left, they saw we left, and Russian was giving them satellite intel and all that. They gave them MiGs, the Vietnamese, and they gave them all kinds of military intelligence. And so once the Vietnamese got the intelligence from the Russians that we left, they invaded South Vietnam and took over. And it became one big communist state, and they slaughtered, like they said, the Hamas cut off baby heads. Yeah, they were throwing babies up and catching them on the end of spears, and they killed all the educators and government officials. They chopped off a lot of heads, young and old. They killed whole families. So it was a massive slaughter of South Vietnamese. Oh yeah, they killed Cambodia, the killing field. Remember Cambodia? Pot, he was with North Vietnamese. And so my friend Michael, he escaped Cambodia with his family, the killing fields. And he opened up a sushi restaurant here. And he's a good person and works hard and would never, ever think of breaking any law. Extremely law-abiding, good people. Thankful for the opportunity for a better life for them and their family. Very thankful. So getting back to the story, this is why I say people don't understand history, and blacks and whites. It's just not blacks that don't understand what happened during slavery. Whites don't understand what happened during slavery. Why the existence of the KKK, why the things go on between black and white, and how white leadership sold out white people. And it was between evil blacks and evil whites that they sold out their own people. They made deals, backroom deals, selling out their own people, because their own people were just a means to a better life for these evil white people and evil black people. So they were making backdoor deals, and keeping the tension between the two allowed them to reign. So creating this negativity allowed them to reign supreme, and so they wanted black people and white people, and that's what Martin Luther King expresses. And he understood the backdoor deals. So in that way, Martin Luther King was absolutely right. And he saw white and black people getting along and playing in harmony and so on and so forth. But to do this, he had to end the backdoor deals. Well, sorry to say, both white and black knew that. And for some reason, he was able to get there and shoot from the balcony, but there are a lot of people around. It wasn't like he was in this secluded spot and pretty much a pretty obvious place to shoot from. So it wasn't this long range, incredible shot that hit Martin Luther King. Think about where he was on the balcony. It wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald and the books were out the window, but in a dark room, no lights on, very hard to see, dark gun. He was more out there. I think he was on, he was more exposed. So I believe it was a deal between certain black people and certain white people that he needed to go because he was killing the backroom deals. So in that way, he was absolutely right. And he was trying to put an end to this underneath dealings between evil people that were causing black and white people to kill themselves. So in that way, he was right. How he went about it down south, absolutely wrong. And so he should have worked more through the churches and went and talked in the black churches instead of in the society and worked through the pastors. That's why Jesus didn't go into the temples, and that's why he's in the garden with the rabbis and so on. He works through them, and that's why he had Paul and others working through them. That's why Paul didn't go into the synagogue. Paul worked with the rabbis and with the Jewish people to create reform. And so this is where you get Jews for Jesus. So Paul was a Jew who was for Jesus. Jesus was a Jew who formed and started Christianity. And so Jews for Jesus, they understand this relationship between the Jews and Jesus. Jesus was a Jew. So they were trying to reform, but to do this, they wanted to work through the pastors. And this is why the Church of Christ was formed. So this one second coming would be able to work through all the churches, and the churches are supposed to be one under Christ. One under Christ, carrying out this second coming's mission, whether you're Catholic or Protestant or Presbyterian or Mormon or any Christian faith, supposed to be one. And then Jews for Jesus, Jews that believe in Jesus, they're part of the Christ Church, and they act as one. And so they act as one. For this one person, there is no division. There is no Catholic or Protestant or Presbyterian or Lutheran. There is just one church under this single person who rules globally, the Catholic Church, the Christian Church. And there is just one mission, his mission. And the church was formed for this mission, and either the church succeeds or it fails. And if it fails, then the church burns. If it succeeds, then the church thrives. So Revelation is very much about the church succeeding or the church dying. So will the church thrive or will the church burn? So if the church stays divided and not carries out these missions, then the church will burn. So the church must be one, united under God, united under Christ, united under the second coming. And any division must be put out immediately, and they must act as one body, one